because I don't mean to. Hey guys, what's up? It's Mabasei here, and tonight we're having a bit of a discussion with a Mr. Improvement. His YouTube channel is youtube.com/positive improvement, and we're gonna have him go first.
Well, let's see. So you and I were having this back and forth conversation on the One Janitor's page or on one of his videos.
Yep.
And I guess it was such a good conversation, you wanted to have more of it. So so you invited me onto this.
Yeah. All right. So what exactly like are the specific issues that you take with the concept of identity politics?
Well, there's a bunch, but I guess on a fundamental level, I think they're hurting more than they're helping. Like the idea of identity politics, it causes more problems than it solves. And I'm all about trying to solve problems in a good way. But more than that, I think when it tries to address problems, more often than not, it looks at the wrong factors or focuses too much on the wrong factors. And again, that just causes, it doesn't cause the right kind of solutions. It just makes things worse.
So, I guess it does, but as like I guess I would say that like that's pretty like general, like what like aspect of it. You're saying that like they focus too much on like what on gender. Race,
well, I can give an example. So the example that we talked about in the comments, Black Lives Matter, right? So I've for a long time been an advocate of reform for police violence, for police use of force, for all that kind of thing. A lot of the same things that Black Lives Matter talks about. But then Black Lives Matter gets involved, and they take the whole issue and make it about race more than about police violence and about police use of lethal force. And it's not as if only black people are ever shot by police, but it becomes only about the black people who are shot by police. And then it grows from there to become all about all racism. And Black Lives Matter starts protesting in places where there are no police issues. It's like they go to UK and start protesting airports because there's racism there or something. Like by making it about race instead of about the specific issue of police violence, then you've made it more difficult to actually solve the problem of police violence. Because now anyone who is opposed to racializing everything is going to be opposed to Black Lives Matter, even if they otherwise would have been okay with resolving issues with police violence. Like if they just made it about, okay, police are killing innocent people, we need to solve this, it probably would have been solved by now. They would have got so much support. Like who's going to be opposed to this? No one's going to be opposed to police killing less people that are innocent. So that's all they needed to do is just focus on that, and they instead focused entirely on race and created all these barriers to solving the problem that didn't need to be there. So that's an example of how identity politics takes a real problem, and it makes it more difficult to solve by shoving one factor into it as the only factor that matters.
Yeah, I feel like they, to an extent, a lot of they're just not well organized for me. Like I largely support them, but what I hate is this loose chapter here, chapter there, affiliation coalition thing, right? Because they're like Black Lives Matter LA has put together money and put forth and actually got a case going against a guy who beat up a cop that beat up and fucking killed a homeless white guy, right? But there are other chapters that would not do something like that. It would all depend. And for the UK thing with the airport thing is that they were protesting the fact that, especially even just things like even just people re-entering the country who are UK citizens, and maybe they went to let's say like Nigeria or something. That's like a big, like one of their biggest like imports, whether they coming from Nigeria or Jamaica or something. They'll usually be picked specifically to be searched for like something like bombs, and like even coming from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Those people can't afford to build houses. Well, how do they have bombs? So they were protesting against them being
But to me,
treated
that's
unfairly.
yeah. But to me, that's spreading out the issue. Then you're like, that's my problem. They took one issue, one specific issue, which was police shooting unarmed black guys, which happens way too much, and then they made it about every situation they could find where black people were treated unfairly. Right? It sprawls, and that way, and what happens is it's never ending as a result, because it's always going to be an example of black people being treated unfairly if you look for it, right? That's not to say, like, obviously black people are treated unfairly by people in America, right? That's pretty obvious, but I think it's more effective to look at it on an issue by issue basis rather than spreading out to every possible example you could find based on race. And then the other thing, also, well, because it's not organized, because there's no like official membership or anything, that means anyone can join, right? So if there's a protest, everyone can come, and your protests are going to attract anarchists. They're going to attract people who just like to riot, who just like to want to burn things and throw Molotov cocktails at cops and stuff. It's going to attract those people. And then if you make it all about race, you're going to attract people who don't care about the issues at all, don't care about police or reform or anything like that, and are only focused on race. You're going to attract those people as well. So you got to be careful when you're organizing this kind of thing, when you're part of a movement like that, that what you do, you can't necessarily control who's going to be attracted to it, right? So people talk about this with Trump, where KKK came and supported him. Well, you can't control that. You can't control who's going to end up supporting you, and that might end up affecting the way people see your movement, see your political movement.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really important to maintain control of your message and keep it specific.
Yeah, I think it's really like it really gets kind of weird when you do it like that. And for me, it seems to be this weird sprawling out of attempting to fight like all injustice for all types of black people that they can find. Seems to be an extension of people saying that they only care about the cop thing. So now, like, we're protesting black people being searched, or this happening, or people being threatened, or this and that. Like, and they're just kind of going around, doing what I guess you could say, even what back in the '60s, what King and Sharpton and all that, what they were doing, which is basically just going all over the country where they could and rallying support to attempt to remedy what they saw as inequalities being perpetrated against black people, which is noble. But when you don't have like a set identity sort of thing, like, like they had Christianity, and Christianity is very much so pacifist based.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, for the most part, they're going to be opposed to the more militant, militant, largely also, not commonly known, like socialist, Black Panther Party, that thought that, if some guy comes up to you screaming nigger with his fist clenched, you better be ready to fight him, as to where, MLK is like, let him punch you.
Yeah, turn the other cheek.
Yeah, so
it's different approaches, right? And there is, so for example, like when there is definite, obvious cases of discrimination, like when there's segregation written into the law, that kind of thing, then there might be a justification for the more aggressive stance, for the, protest that gets violent, all that kind of thing. I would still personally support the MLK style, the Gandhi style, the nonviolent resistance. But you can make an argument for violence when there's a clear case of something that needs to be changed, then sure. But when you're just trying to fight against injustice in general or racism in general, like it's a problem that's probably realistically never going to be completely solved. Right? I don't think racism is ever going to end. There's always going to be racism because we're never going to live in a perfect utopia. So if your goal is to end all racism everywhere, you're going to be fighting forever, for all time, I think. So I personally think it's much more effective to try and solve problems that can actually be solved. So specific instances of racism, work on that instead of all racism everywhere. You see the same thing with feminism, trying to stop violence against women. in general, all violence against all women, instead of focusing on one specific law that can be changed or one specific state where it's worse than everywhere else, something like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would think is I would think that most people, they would see that reasoning, because the common retort when people say like it's not just black people, they're like, well, they're disproportionately shot while not wielding a weapon, as opposed to, for the most part, if you're white and not holding a weapon, you're just less likely to die. It still happens, but you're less likely to die than the black guy who's not holding a weapon.
So my issue with that,
like that,
with that sentence, with what you just said there, is you're sort of falling into the same Black Lives Matter that I run with Black Lives Matter, and you're using the race of the person as the only relevant factor, right? So they're saying, like, okay, if you're black and you're unarmed, you're more likely to be shot than a white guy. Have we looked at all the factors? Like, maybe those black people that were shot while they were unarmed were in high crime areas or in poor areas, whereas white people are just less likely to be in poor areas or high crime areas. So maybe that's the actual relevant thing here, as opposed to the race of the person. You get what I'm saying?
I would, but for the most part, anyone who's being, randomly, being dispatched in the street like that, whether they be white or black, are usually impoverished, or for, especially on the white end, especially, are in fact mentally ill in some way. And a lot of time cops are not trained to deal with those people. And for that, even for that, there's a disparity there, like for me, I don't believe you can end racism, but my thing is, if everyone's going to be if people are going to be dicked around, dick them all around. Like, let's be fair here. I mean, if niggers are thugs, then I don't know, insert stereotype of white people here. Like, let's just be fair about it.
Yeah, I agree to a certain extent, but the thing is, like, the reality is like, if you're looking at all poor people, there's a disproportionate number of black people in that group. People are equally likely to get shot by the police, then you're going to end up with more black people being shot by the police. So we don't know for sure that it's the fact that they're black that is the relevant thing. It could just be cops are just killing a bunch of poor people, and because black people make up, say, I don't know the number, 75% of the poor people, they are also 70% of the people that get shot. So unless there's actual evidence that the cop is racist, like if they have a history of complaints related to race or something like that, we should be jumping to the conclusion the race-based shooting, like the race of anyone, shouldn't be relevant until we know it's relevant. Because every time you see a story, white cop shoots black man, people assume that's what matters, that it's the fact that it's a white guy and a black guy, that's the important thing. And I think that's dangerous, because that just breeds more racism, more division amongst people. Because white people will be like, well, no, they get upset at the race baiting, and then black people will get upset at the racism, and then everyone's upset, instead of looking at it and seeing, okay, well, let's look at the situation specifically. Why did this shooting happen? Was there any justification for it, et cetera, et cetera? Trying to be reasonable about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For me, I feel like there's two extremes of the argument. There's like a fuck the police and then there's people who just gobble cop cock. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, the guy who says he cannot in good conscience convict the guy who shot a man in his fucking back, unloaded his clip into his back, and then tried to plant a taser in broad daylight.
That's what happens. That's what happens. You get, like, I'm not sure which came first, like the cops can't do anything wrong and fuck the police, but they're, every time someone says fuck the police, you create a new person who says cops can't do anything wrong. And every time you say cops can't do anything wrong, you create someone who says fuck the police. Extremism grows itself, and they both need to stop. Like, as I said from the beginning, I have, for my entire adult life, been an advocate of police reform. Like, police should not be killing people unless they have absolutely no other choice. You know, they should be trained in every non-lethal form of combat that you can think of. Tasers, batons, grappling, whatever they need to know how to do to not kill somebody. Right? Because there's a jury out there. But at the same time, you know, that doesn't mean fuck the police. Most police are, you know, they've enlisted in a job that's where their life's going to be in danger in order to protect people, most of them. I think my default position for cops is respect until they do something to not deserve the respect anymore. So I'm not like they can't do anything wrong, but I'm gonna default to saying, okay, I respect them. I respect the choice they've made in their career, at least.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. I teeter back and forth because I meet and have known cops that are decent people, and then I've met and known cops that are like Fox News brainwashed, and that was really disheartening.
They just wanted to hold the gun.
Yeah, basically, like, right, like I don't know if they're racist, but they absolutely were. Like I wouldn't trust him to babysit, let alone patrol the neighborhood. But it is what it is. And then on top of that,
they're definitely
like, yeah. For me, on top of that, there's like this certain like almost like boys club bullshit where they don't want to tell on each other when they do bad things. And when people do testify, they're like ostracized, and instead of congratulating them on helping to clean up the department and the reputation of the police with the people, fuck that guy, and he's like and stuff like that. It makes me think like you're a gang. You're a state-sanctioned gang. That's what gangbangers do. If you testify against a guy, they're gonna come to your house, shoot you and your mom in the head. Like, the only thing you haven't done is come to the guy's house and shoot his wife or something. Like, you've taken him, you've stripped him of his fucking thing, sometimes reducing, you know, his position, or finding any old reason to fire the guy right afterwards. Like, people who he thought was his friends won't talk to him anymore. Like, in this some sort of pattern repeats every time a cop whistle blows, and I'm like, that is fucked up. And these people want people to think and associate them to be higher than common fucking thugs. No, that's thuggery.
Yeah. So what that is, you see that in any kind of profession or group, so like gangs or anything else, where you've got to be able to trust your life to the guy sitting next to you, or the girl sitting next to you, right? You end up with this club-like, this gang-like mentality of it's us against the world, and I have to be able to rely on you 100%. So if your fellow cop then goes around and tells on you that, and you know, squeals, then they're seen as betraying that trust. So that's why that hatred is there, because they build up these things like, oh, you got to be able to trust each other with your lives, and that comes up. So I think there needs to be some reform in that way too, in terms of, yeah, you need to be able to trust them with your life, but you shouldn't be able to trust your fellow cops to not tell on you when you break the law. You know, there should be levels of trust. So yeah, you can trust them to cover your back in terms of someone trying to kill you or hurt you, but you can't trust them to cover up for your crimes. And that needs to be the mentality in every police force all over the world.
Yeah, it should be expected that these people are gonna tell on you. It shouldn't be like, yo, bro, you gonna narc? Like, what is this? Yeah. Is this fucking high school? Of course I'm gonna tell on you. And that sort of thing
I would totally advocate for.
Yeah, which for me is what always is for me breeds like, I mean, teeter between like, you know, oh, cops are vital and fuck the police, like, cause like yeah, this guy's nice. Then like the general thing and talking to these people, like knowing them as friends, like some of the stupid shit that they attempt to do, and like people literally saying like they don't really give a fuck about the place that they're patrolling or who they're ticketing or whatever. It's just a check or all this stuff, and that's a neighborhood that, I mean, that's a attitude that's going to be bred into you eventually at just about any job, really, right? Especially at
Yeah,
the
you could
pay
become
grade that
junior.
they get. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but I think the problem is with with anyone saying "fuck the police." Like, if you're gonna have laws, you gotta have people that are there to enforce the laws. I know some anarchists who are like would be okay with no police force, or anarcho-capitalists who want to privatize police force and that kind of thing. But if we're going to have some version of our current society, you got to have cops, right? So we should be trying to make the cops the best cops that they can possibly be, and demonizing them, saying they're all racist or horrible people. That's not the best way to make the cops as good as they can be, because that's just going to make them more paranoid, more hateful. It's going to make the good people not apply to become cops in the first place. Right? If all you're hearing all day is cops are racist, cops kill people all the time, cops are bad people, and you're a good person who's not a racist, are you really going to apply to be a cop?
maybe if I
Like,
feel like I want to try and make a difference and show that, not all cops are
maybe.
racist, I can be that change in this environment that I would like to see. But not everyone would be on that kind of noble
Yeah.
shonen anime attitude.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably like 5% of people at best that'll actually do that.
Yeah.
Person tries to avoid being in a place where they're hated, tries to avoid that people are going to dislike them for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually completely forget what were we originally disagreeing about on the T1J video.
I thought it was just on the notion of identity politics in general. Now, what I would say is that a lot of what you say is correct, but for the most part, given how society is and how we're not over the baggage of the bullshit to that was done to blacks, to Asians, to natives, to the Irish, right? All that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
That's like we're not over all of that stuff. There's a reason why the majority of poor white people are of Irish descent, and it's not
Yeah, there's all
it's not
sorts.
a fucking coincidence, right? And for the most part, these people with this identity in these communities that they have, it's like I said, if they don't group up and put their voices together into one cohesive whole and shout, they just won't be heard.
Well, um, yeah, I see the logic in that. I see the logic in, like, if you're a group who is disadvantaged in some way, and you see all the other, like, the majority of people like yourself are also disadvantaged, then the instinct is to group up and say, okay, this is not fair for us. We should be treated better. But I don't think that's the best way to fix it, because the cause of the problem, right? The reason that Irish people don't have it as good as other white people, let's say, or black people don't have it as good as the rest of society, or natives don't have it as good, is because they were treated as different from everyone else, right? They were treated as a separate group. So the solution is not more of the same. The solution is not more treating them as a separate group. The solution is emphasizing the ways they're like everyone else. That, in my opinion, that's the way to do it. That's what we should be pushing towards, not by force, but hopefully naturally over time. So if you want anyone who's disadvantaged right now, if you want them to be less disadvantaged in the future, they should be encouraged not necessarily to act like white people. That's not what I'm suggesting, but to act like whatever's successful in society. Whoever is, so pick role models, people who are good people and who are doing well in society, and be more like them. Whoever to you, right? So this could be a black person, could be a Chinese person, could be doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't matter how they're acting, as long as they're good people and they're successful. We should be all reaching towards some sort of role model of this group mentality. We're all oppressed, so treat us differently in order for us not to be oppressed anymore. I don't think that works.
I would say, I don't know. I would say that some of the extremes with that it does not work. But as far as things such as what, like, I don't even really know because we haven't even actually tried a lot of that shit. Like, to circumvent a lot of it up until right now, the most helped person with affirmative action, were mostly like fucking white women, usually from middle class backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like that shit. I don't even know what do you do, right? Because that shit. And then they started more so enforcing the racial thing towards like the mid '80s or whatever. But in the midst of a crack epidemic, what the fuck? Who are you gonna hire? Like, I don't know.
You can't conjure out of nowhere good applicants, right? Like that is the whole affirmative action thing. That's trying to fix the problem from the ass end. You're trying to go backwards. It's like trying to. It's like if you eat poisoned food, it's like trying to fix the problem after you've already eaten it, processed it, and had diarrhea. It's like, no, you've got to not eat the poisoned food in the first place.
Yeah, I think that when it was set up, though it's really fucked up, but though that's set up, there were way more, at least as compared to even starting the 80s or now, there are way more black professionals, way more black people with upskilled labor, and a lot more black people who were educated in some sort of way, who deserved a fair shake, who do not get that in mainstream society during Jim Crow. So they set that up, and that was supposed to be to help them to integrate and to enforce this law. They said, hey, you can't discriminate. So then they would just say that, oh, I didn't do that because he didn't have enough years of experience or whatever, randomly. So they just by go at least hire 50 of them. That like the government has to step in and make some people play fair because they refused. Yeah, but now that's not how it is anymore.
Exactly, and even then, I would have disagreed with it. I think. I still think that's the wrong way to solve that problem. But to be clear, I'm talking about social change. If there's a law in place, like Jim Crow days, if there's like a discriminatory law, then I'm all for change, like in whatever way you need to change that law. That's what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes the violent method may be better if you're trying to just draw attention to a very specific thing that could be changed. But in terms of just social change, stuff like that, affirmative action, all that kind of thing, what that really ends up doing is all the people who made it legitimately, they're now viewed as, oh, maybe they're only here because they're black or because they're a woman. Even if they got there legitimately, people don't know if they were only hired to fill a diversity quota, right? So what happens is everyone else in the company starts to think, starts to look at this person and be like, do they really deserve to be here? And you can't help it. This is an automatic thing. Like when there's like they might have gone through an easier path, then you can't help but like think less of them. It's natural.
Yeah, I could see that, but also I feel like that sort of thing also is like one-sided egotism when you think about it, because also like you could also be, maybe you're a white person, or maybe the boss is Hispanic, or maybe the boss, and specifically as now things have been sort of changing in a lot of places. Maybe the boss is a black lady, maybe the boss is whatever, and you could be a person and wonder, like, why would you not sit and wonder, was I only hired because they thought that I was charming? Like, was I really not the most experienced applicant, or did they just happen to like me as a person, so they decided to give me a chance? Or are they racist, and did they only put me in this position so they would say they don't have any openings, so they wouldn't have to hire a minority? Like, like all types of stuff, all types of factors and bullshit go into why we have the opportunities we do or do not have.
Well, of course, people always have those doubts, right?
are
No,
weird.
people have those doubts, but the thing is, with something like that, with something like charm or the fact that you're a white guy, rules in place that encourage the hiring of charming people or white guys. When there's an official rule that everyone can see and everyone knows about, then that's different than, because then you're sure, you know that there's going to be at least someone hired just because of their gender or just because of their race. You're not sure who it is. Okay, so let's say you're a black woman and you got hired by a tech company, right? And you know there's been a push to hire more people of color, more women in the tech industry. So you get hired. Now, how do you know you were hired because you deserve the job? Maybe you were just hired to fill a diversity quota. You don't even know yourself. So maybe you have these extra doubts on yourself, on your own abilities, because you'd have to be a really confident person to not have some doubt about that. And then all your coworkers, they might think, oh, this is just the diversity hire. And you might be aware of that, so you might feel the need to prove yourself even more. You push yourself too hard, and then you end up failing because you push yourself too hard. And there's all these factors that go into it that wouldn't be there if you didn't have this push to force companies to hire people based on anything other than merit. You know what I mean? Like, if it's just based on merit, and everyone knows it's just based on merit, then there'll be no questions about why someone got hired. I mean, as someone in the chat pointed out, charm is a merit, right? So if you just do it merit-based, then you're going to have a lot less people worried about why someone got hired.
Really?
Yeah, sorry.
Really, I wouldn't necessarily say that charm is necessarily a merit, because for me, merit is about like a skill that you went out and you acquired it through education or experience or work. Some people are just naturally more charming than others. That's not a merit. That might, for a certain amount of people, from my experience anyway, people who are charming, to me, usually it's fairly natural. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a stick.
I get what you're saying. But okay, I know for me personally, I'm capable of being charming, especially in professional situations, and I had to work at that. I'm actually naturally pretty shy, and when I was like a teenager, I didn't have great social skills, but I worked at it. I practiced by talking to a lot of people and working in customer service and that kind of thing. That really helped build my skills in that way. So it could just be natural. I also have friends like that who are just naturally charming no matter what they do. Everyone loves them. And in that case, maybe it's not necessarily a merit thing, but it's also not like a demographic thing. If we're going to talk about charm not being a merit, then we got to say intelligence isn't a merit either. And all sorts of other personality traits. So
that would all be like whatever, right? Because the component of intelligence as to what it is and where it's coming from and whether it's your genes or your environment or a mixture of both is still up in the air in most
it's
science.
Both. They had I hear that a lot, actually. I hear that it's still a debate and there's still lots to discuss about that. They had that debate in like the 70s in psychology and in various disciplines of science, and they pretty much solved it that it was about 50-50. Like, there's variance, but on average it's about 50-50. Like personality, intelligence, all that kind of thing, it's about half your genes, half your environment, more or less. Because they did all these twin studies where twins that were adopted by different families and were raised, had completely different environments but the exact same genetics, and so they did all these long-term testing on these twins, and that's what they figured out. It's like they're about half the same and half different, in like consistently across all these twins. That's what they found. So the nature nurture thing, that debate was pretty much solved. It's both in most cases. I mean, there are some exceptions, of course, but in general, especially in personality, it's both.
Yeah, I would say, I don't really know. I would say that for what they show is that they had similar IQs, or like not a negligible percentage, or sometimes the exact same one. As far as that one,
yeah.
And then that gets down into the minutia: is what is an IQ?
Yeah.
What does it measure? What does it mean to be intelligent? what do we say about the fact that, Einstein used to get lost in his own home, but was to a great extent a brilliant physicist? And it just, the bullshit gets
Yeah,
way
just this,
deeper than
it
that.
gets really complicated. The topic of intelligence is a whole other, because yeah, you could talk about the capacity to learn, you could talk about knowledge, you could talk about application, problem solving, all that kind of thing.
And then and
Different
what
kinds of thinking.
Yeah, and where does willpower play into that, right? Because I know
Yeah.
people who fucking have like fucking 132 IQs who live in their parents' garage.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the smartest people I know is a landscaper for a living, and doesn't read, doesn't know like any kind of academic knowledge, really, but he's a genius. He just isn't built for school.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's just there's all sorts of different intelligences. Um, so that's actually something that gets on my nerves a lot when people talk about book smart as if it's the only kind of intelligence that matters. And if you don't have like a master's degree, then you're not smart, or all that kind of bullshit.
yeah. I think most all that stuff comes down to discipline, right?
Yeah,
The school is about
hard people and
discipline.
successful people. That's that's more important than intelligence. I think is how hard working you are. If you just work harder than everyone else, then you can do really well in life.
Yeah, it
That's
also helps to have a nice decent amount of connections into
Oh yeah,
a field or something of where you're trying to go.
yeah,
It,
but you can get that through hard work too. You just have to you have to really work hard at it. You have to like go to all the events and all the just network all day every day, and then you can make the connections. But it definitely that's like it's like a video game. There's easy mode, there's medium, there's hard mode. So if you've got the connections and you start off with a bit of money and your parents have connections, then you're playing life on easy mode. You know, you still have to work hard to do it. Like you still have to play, you still have to actually do the things, but it's not as hard for someone who grew up in like the ghetto with no connections. Both people can technically succeed. It's just a lot harder for one than the other.
yeah.
But I'm surprised we were having this whole back and forth in the comments, and now we're agreeing on everything.
I don't know. I guess that happens. Some people are different. I would say you were a lot less extreme than a lot of people I've gotten into spats with, because it always, for some reason, like, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people who advocate from your side of the argument, for some reason, like, this is like stereotypical of the left or the progressive or whatever, but at some point they just have to reveal that they're essentially just racist or just sexist or homophobic or some crazy shit. Like, if you grill them hard enough, they always eke out a teeny bit of like racism or some sort of bigotry. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And their Facebook profile says that they're like 21. And I'm like, who are you raised by? Your fucking great grandfather? How is this even happening?
Well,
so weird.
The thing that I always try to remind myself when I'm talking to people on YouTube or anything else like that is social media is skewed young, right? Like grandmothers aren't on YouTube or Twitter, right? So it's a bunch of young people. And then on top of that, half of all people are below average intelligence, right? So probably half the people you're talking to are stupid. So I try to keep that in mind. It's like, you're going to have stupid people on every side of the argument. And I try not to judge an entire viewpoint based on the stupid people that happen to join it. And especially on YouTube right now, YouTube is pretty much, from what I can see, dominated in terms of this discussion, like identity politics, is dominated by the anti-SJW group, right? That's the dominant group on YouTube. So you're going to get most people, especially the people that are just looking for entertainment, maybe the less intelligent people are gonna find someone like the Amazing Atheist or Thunderfoot or whoever else, and they're gonna find something that appeals to them about that. Like, especially the Amazing Atheist, he just really appeals to people who aren't very smart. I'm not saying that all people who watch Amazing Atheist are stupid, but the way he does it, the way he makes arguments, is not designed to appeal to the most intelligent, discerning people.
Yeah, which is so funny when he made like a thing of his reply to like answers that SJWs have for whatever's. When he was like, it sounds to me like you think you're a real smart motherfucker, but yeah, I'm here to tell you you're not. I'm a smart motherfucker. Like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. He thinks being a man in his 30s who's still an edgy teenager makes him a smart motherfucker. I love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely not an Amazing Atheist fan. I didn't even watch his reply, mostly because I did one of my own, and I was sick of that video by then. I could only stand watching one other person's reply to that. But yeah, I'm not surprised that he did that. He's awful. I'm not gonna. You're never gonna find me defending the Amazing Atheist.
Yeah, he's.
And unfortunately, he's probably the most prominent one of all the anti-SJWs. So when people first see the anti-SJW community, for lack of a better word, that's who they see, and that's like the representative person. At best, they see Sargon of Akkad, but he's not perfect either.
I don't know what's wrong with that man. I really wish he would stop calling himself on the left, because he agrees with almost every single like Fox News talking point and has used the Pioneer Foundation as sources and videos. And I'm like, what's left leading about that?
He's awful. Okay, so I have some criticisms of Sargon. One, he's not great at admitting when he's wrong. Two, he uses awful sources. He doesn't check his sources very well. He doesn't he'll find an article that fits with whatever he wants to talk about, and then he won't research the source of the article. He won't research the paper it comes from and what their political leanings are or anything like that, their biases. But the funny thing is, I hear you saying you can't believe he's left. I know people who think he's a communist, or a Marxist, sorry, who think he's like extreme left. So I don't even know where to put him on the political spectrum personally, but I think he has there's a few issues with him.
Yeah. It's weird. I guess maybe people would say that because also he lost like in one day like 3,000 subs with his "Why Black People Commit Crime" video. Like, it was one of the most moderate things I've ever. It's one of the most moderate things I've ever seen in my fucking life. And 3,000 people said, "Fuck you," and some of the comments are like, another apologist for the black thug. And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. He just simply said they're poor. They live in urban areas. Urban blight is a thing that goes all the way back to fucking Rome. If you live in a city and you're poor, you're gonna be, trying to mug people and do crazy shit. And
well, I think that's actually good then. That if that happened, because I think as a YouTube person, you need to weed out your subscriber base of all the worst people, because otherwise, because despite what people say, I do think the people that subscribe to you do represent you in some way. Like, the audience reflects the person.
Right? Dude, so I agree with that wholly. If you say some shit and you're in Stormfront's endorsing you, I'm sorry, but you should probably reassess.
Well, it doesn't mean you need to change your opinions. When that happens, when you've got some horrible people agreeing with you, you probably have to take a step back and think, okay, do I really believe everything I'm saying here? Am I expressing myself properly? It's a good, but just in general, like the type of people, you go to a channel that's all about making fun of people and all, you go to Bearing's channel and you look at the comments, it's going to be very different than some of the quality of comment, the type of argument that happens, if the type of debate that happens, if there is even any debate, is very different than you see on a more intellectual channel, or even T1J's channel. As much as I disagree with him, he does promote a more intellectual discussion than someone like Bearing or Amazing Atheist or even Sargon. So I think that's a valid thing to think about in terms of YouTubers. And I know I'm not a big YouTuber by any stretch, but I've made an effort to try to challenge the assumptions, challenge my subscribers, to sort of weed out people that I don't agree with. Not necessarily weed them out. Like I want everyone to watch my videos, hopefully, but I don't want a bunch of supporters who think I believe things that I don't. You know what I mean? I don't want people just assuming I'm on their side just because I agree with them about something else. Which is, I think, sort of what some of the anti-SJW people do. They make points that they know are going to be interpreted as agreement for, say, Stormfront. So, but then they never specifically disavow that viewpoint. They never specifically say no, here's all the reasons I'm not on the side of Stormfront. You get that?
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, someone in the chat, I should clarify. I'm not saying you're accountable what your audience does, but I'm saying you can tell a lot about a YouTuber by their audience, by what kind of audience they attract.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
It's basically the same principle as you judge by the company you keep.
Yeah.
Like if I'm attracting crazy weirdos, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and I always love when YouTubers complain about the YouTube comments. Say like, "Oh, YouTube comments are awful. They're always the worst." It's like, that probably has something to do with your content.
He said that does not reflect upon you. If what you say attracts and emboldens someone who's a piece of shit, what you've said, whether it be right or wrong, like that. If you're like a critical thinking person, you would think, like, why the fuck is my video being praised on Stormfront or on, I don't know, on the slash politically incorrect board on 4chan. Like that's a thing that you, as a person, okay, so if you're a decent person, you would think about, like, fuck, why do poll kids like my video?
So I definitely think you should do that. But then the next step is maybe you realize, okay, they're only doing this because they also dislike feminists, right? My video was anti-feminist and they also dislike feminists. That's all this is. And then it's okay. Then you don't necessarily need to change your views. But if they're praising it as like this, oh, this guy's a great white supremacist channel and you're not a white supremacist, then maybe, okay, I need to take a step back and think about what I'm saying in my videos.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think some people. This is on Twitter, but not on YouTube. I think some people on Twitter thought I was alt-right because I made a bunch of tweets critical of Hillary Clinton. I've made some things defending Trump. I may have retweeted something funny that I thought that an alt-right person had posted that I thought was genuinely funny. So then when I posted something that was against the alt-right, all of a sudden all these alt-right people are like, what's up? What, like, why are you so hostile? What's going on? So I think it's important to make it clear, especially when you're a big YouTuber or big, have a lot of supporters, make it clear what you actually believe and what you don't, so that everyone knows. So it's, you're not going to be attracting people who you fundamentally disagree with.
Yeah, but if you go on there and saying, hold on, I disagree with feminists, but none of that genuine misogynist shit in there, like where you're talking about, like, I hope people get raped and stuff, like, hey guys, don't post that. I don't support that. You're accused of virtue signaling, as if you're not genuine in your disavowing of genuine misogyny or racism or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the content. Like if you're saying it with the specific purpose of looking virtuous, then that's virtue signaling, right? Then that's what. Sorry, are you still there? Or are you just muted?
Yeah, I'm still here. Someone was just informing something.
So, like, virtue signaling is a real thing, and people do it. It's just people want to be seen as good. They want to be seen as good people. So if that's your motive, but it's hard to tell motive, right? It's hard to tell why someone said what they did. So the best thing to do is ask them about it, and if you can't do that, then don't assume it's for the worst possible reason.
Yeah, see, that's that, and that from that side of the argument, from the anti-SJW side of the argument, and when accusing people of virtue signaling, I'm always noticing that they're saying that, but you're doing the same thing of people saying that these people are racist, these people are sexist because blah blah blah, and they accuse them like, oh, aren't you the fucking psychic? Well,
yeah,
which aren't you? Oh, you're not saying this.
That.
You don't really da da da. You know, I don't know, dank meme is like you're just fucking virtue signaling. Like it baffles me to see how alike these two camps are.
Well, you end up becoming the mirror image of what you're fighting against, right? That tends to be what happens, and so it doesn't surprise me. Like I was involved in Gamergate, and it didn't surprise me as parts of Gamergate became more and more like the people opposed to Gamergate, like the SJWs themselves. They started to adopt the same tactics and all that kind of thing. And it happens. It's when you fight against something for long enough, you start to learn from them, see what they do that works, and start doing it yourself.
One might take care of constantly fighting monsters lest you become a monster yourself.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a Nietzsche quote.
Yep. Yep.
That's really, I don't know. That's really weird. I don't know. I wouldn't.
Sorry, you're not going to hear me saying the anti-SJW community is perfect. The people that criticize feminism are perfect. I just think they're more right than the other side. They're more factually correct on average than the other side, or at least they're fighting against a method of problem solving, a method of changing the world that I disagree with. So that's on a fundamental level why I'm on that side, why I'm part of that community. Yeah, it's not because I agree with everything they do or say. It's because. Sorry, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Oh, sorry, I just got an error message on my computer for my mic, but okay, I guess it's working. Yeah, like I don't subscribe to the idea that to be part of a community, you have to agree with everything that everyone in the community does or says. In fact, I think you should be most critical of the people on your side. When they do something you disagree with, they do something wrong. Because if you're associated with them, then people are going to judge you on that. Guilt by association is a very common thing, and you can't really just pretend that it doesn't exist.
Something in the chat. The lemon difference, whatever he said, was saying is that the company you keep is who you choose. You don't choose who likes you. Of course, but if you're saying something that they like, and it appeals to their sensibilities, like if I appeal to a I don't know what to say, a black supremacist, sensibilities, then I should really, reassess or think about what I'm saying and why it appeals to this person. That's all we're saying. It doesn't say you have to change all your opinions or whatever to suit whatever. It's just about the fact of, these things are, these are things that you as a conscientious sort of person, a thinking person, should think about. Like why are people who would align themselves with, Hitler and all this other shit, like why do they agree with me?
Yeah. Now, to be clear, in most cases, I find it's usually because you happen to overlap on one issue or a couple issues. That's usually the reason. So it doesn't mean that you need to change anything. But I think when you're putting your ideas out there in public, which is the whole reason I have a YouTube channel, is because I have all these ideas. I want to throw them out there and see what sticks and what doesn't. Right. So if you're doing that, you've got to be open to every method you can to changing your viewpoints, to improving your viewpoints, to seeing what's right and what's not, what works and what doesn't. And that's just one of the many ways to do it, is seeing who agrees with you. If you make a YouTube channel with your honest views and you end up surrounding yourself and all your followers are Nazis, then maybe you're a Nazi. You know, it's something to consider at least.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, if people of their ideology or whatever are defined by what they believe, and if you are appealing to a certain ideology, you might, without even knowing it, adhere to it. You know?
Yeah. So Lyman Dufresne says, if someone likes me, that doesn't mean I'm keeping their company. Jodie Foster didn't keep the company of the guy who shot Reagan. And the guy who shot Reagan, his motivation was to get Jodie Foster to like him. So keeping company wasn't probably the best word, but it's just a phrase. It's just a
it's just a phrase. But even then, you could say that someone. What it's more so akin to social media though, because that's what YouTube is, right? People see their comments, they interact, and instead of going in and say disclaimer, if you're here from Stormfront, fuck you, you're scum. I don't want you subscribe to me. And then you're generally letting them just kind of go along for the ride, even if you honestly don't agree with them. You're letting them come along for the ride on your channel.
This is where we disagree, actually. I'm fine with Stormfront following my videos, liking my videos, commenting on my videos. That's fine with me. I don't want them to thinking that I agree with their white supremacist viewpoints. That's the key. So if they're following me and liking me for my criticism of social justice, that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, that also opens me up legitimately to someone that wants to criticize me for having fans that are Stormfront, but I can counter that. I can just say, well, they know I don't agree with everything they have to say. I've made it clear that I don't agree with everything they have to say. So that's all there is to it. Yeah, and if someone was to, if someone wants to hate you, they'll find a way to hate you. That's not something you really need to worry about in stuff like this. Especially something like that, like who happens to like your videos. You don't have to worry about it in terms of who's going to criticize you.
Yeah, I would say that. See, that's the thing. But you said that you genuinely would make it public that you are. But I think that we both know, especially on some of the lower rung minds in this YouTube space on both ends, attract some of the worst kind of people, and they don't tell them, "Hey, no, go the fuck away." They just let them go along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what brought this up was Sargon making that video about what was it? Why black people commit crimes.
Yeah,
is that the video? Yeah, and then he lost 3,000 subscribers. So that was an example of what you should do. You should make that video about your honest views, and if that makes 3,000 people say "fuck you," then that's good. Because they weren't tolerant of other viewpoints to begin with. So why would you want them around?
Yeah, and they were like obviously unabashedly like weird and racist. I think before that video came out, I actually did get into some sort of debate with a guy on his channel who did genuinely believe that that the racial crime disparity was genetic.
Oh yeah, really I've seen people like that. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was arguing with someone just was it yesterday or the day before who just honestly believes that white people are genetically better. That's their honest opinion, and they think they think that's just a fact.
That doesn't even make any sense. Genes are only as good as the environment you throw them in. No race could be better or whatever. Like blacks are inferior if you threw them in Northern Europe with no sort of like technology and stuff to protect themselves.
My thing with it is like there are average racial differences, but if we're gonna play that game, like who wins at like every sport? Who's better at every sport? Black people, right? It's like 100-meter dash. Where's the white guys, right? You pretty much name the sport, unless it's a sport that needs you to be small and thin. Black people, if they apply themselves to it, are probably gonna win at it. So
we saw in the past Olympics things that are usually done by small, thin little white girls actually were the gold were taken by black women.
There you go.
Who are like freaking 6 foot tall.
Yeah, no, it's seriously, so if we're gonna play that game, then I don't think white guys are the best have the have the best argument to make there.
They always go for intellect, but then they forget that if we look into history, we're all living off the backs of like 100 guys, like base inventions that honestly for what they were in our modern day really wouldn't be that useful. Like the way that the government came up with and did like the internet, that's great, but us on this hangout without some of the fathers of the internet that we know today, which includes a Nigerian mathematician, right? Would not be as fast enough to do a Google Hangout. So even then, like it's dumb.
Yeah,
you need all kinds of people
thing,
to make the world go round.
And how do you, and for the intellect argument, how do you separate out and a stable family homes and environment and all that from everything else when you're talking about trying to measure intelligence and everything like that? It's like, yeah, black people in America are on average poorer than white people. So if you measure intelligence, I think the poor people are going to measure out as less intelligent. Is that really surprising?
That's really silly. Because also another thing that's funny that they reference the bell curve in that same book. They said that fucking Poles, Chechnyan immigrants, and Ukrainians, and Russians, immigrants and people of that descent in America, they have their IQ was on par with the fucking black people.
Yeah,
like they were 4 points off.
This is identity politics. This is, again, you go to both extremes. You get identity politics. The white nationalists, Stormfront, that's identity politics. That's just they just have a different idea of who the oppressed group is, who's superior, who's inferior, all that kind of thing. The methodology, the language is different, but it's still identity politics at the core of it. And
yeah,
it's bad no matter how you do it. It's not the way to solve the world's problems. Everyone wants to solve the world's problems. We just all disagree on what the problems are and how to solve them. That's all. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't even know. For me, it seems silly that a majority group that holds most of the power, unless we go for their bullshit and say the white people don't control anything. Those are all them dang Jews. Like excluding that with crazy shit.
I really enjoy the Jew memes from the alt-right. They're usually hilarious, genuinely funny. But it's funny because I find absurdity funny. That's my sense of humor, is absurdity.
Oh yeah, dude.
So
I get it. I laugh at those too. It's funny. Hilarious. It's like the ones where they put like there's Black Lives Matter and then they put it and they're like, yes, Goyim, fight.
Yeah,
the exactly. Like it's funny.
It's so absurd. It's hilarious. I know what you're saying. Like So what was the point you were making? Sorry, you were making a point.
No, I was saying
the majority group.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like how could people who are the majority group, who if they wanted to, if they just decided to just coalesce, they could literally just by force purge all the coloreds out of their neighborhoods, countries, or whatever, just if they wanted to. How could you be oppressed? You could just flip the fucking switch and just kill them all if you felt like it. How are you oppressed?
I think that's what they want to do. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to coalesce and purge. I think that's the goal. That's the plan. Sorry, it's not funny, but it's absurd, so that's why I'm laughing, because it's
funny to me because how are you oppressed? Is it because the government says no, don't do that? That's oppression to you. Hey, don't kill those people because they look different. That's oppression to you.
Okay, to be fair, I don't think they actually use the term oppression. I think they use other terms. I don't think they talk about advantage and disadvantage. They talk about better and worse. That's their thing. They're like, we're better than them.
Yeah, no,
so
dude.
We should have all the power. And
yeah, no, dude. It's actually become they're using the same language as you would say like extreme SJWs about groups. About they generally like if anyone's oppressed, it's us.
Oh God.
Like it's great. Oh God. I'm all over every billboard and running most 500, Fortune 500 companies. But, if anyone's done underling, it's me.
And that's again, this is my thing with identity politics. It's why is the skin color or race the relevant thing? Could it be that maybe the people who are running things are the rich people, the people with a lot of connections, the people that started out their life with a lot of money? Maybe those are the people in charge. It's not the fact that they're white men; it's the fact that they're rich.
Oh yeah,
And
but
maybe the white people are rich because this country was founded by white people.
well, yeah, and of course, wealth was hoarded and kept within those things by way
Of
of
course, well,
anti-miscegenation laws and all kinds of racist bullshit that
whoever
makes
has the power tries to keep it, right? So
yeah.
that's why, like, the people in charge now are essentially demographically the same people who have always been in charge in America.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right?
Even some of the richest families actually like even something like simple like Walmart. They're great whatever before the store. Like they got that money to start that store up was like passed down through them from
Yeah,
having slave holding ancestors.
No, it's people act like it's racism that got first place, but no, it was because they came from white countries. Like if there had been an empire in Africa at the time and it had colonized and some African country had colonized America, then African people would have all the power and money right now. And they probably would have enslaved white people because there's been slavery all through history of every race.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's not like if it pisses me off so much when people focus on the race of the people in charge in America and act like that's proof of racism. Well, if you go to England, all the rich people are English. If you go to China, all the rich people are Chinese. If you go to Turkey, all the rich people are Turkish. It's like whoever founds the country, whoever's the dominant group, whoever's the most populous group, they're going to be the people in charge. That's just the way it works, unless you live in a country that's been conquered. Right? Then the conquerors are going to be in charge. Right? That's what you saw in South Africa. Right? And I consider colonization conquering. Like people I don't know why we have this difference of language with colonies.
It's just the way,
really,
it's just to make it sound better. Like they did that to appeal to the people of the nations, right? Like they said we're gonna go conquer those blacks. Like some people are like even then, even though they didn't necessarily have the most sympathy or whatever for these people, the common person, like conquer, isn't that what like the French tried to do to us? Like that doesn't seem
what you do
bad.
Equals. That's the thing. Conquer is a word you use for equals, for war. When you're fighting savages, right, or you're fighting tribes or something like that, then they don't even get the respect of being an equal, of having a war. It's not a war. Oh, yeah. You're colonizing. Sorry, we have a comment from another one from Lyman Dufresne. Fuck the rich / bankers is the justification for most mass killings. Well, I can't speak for Mabasei here, but I'm a capitalist, so rich or fuck bankers. I'm commenting on the fact that the people in charge are rich, so if you want to complain about it, then that's the relevant factor. Right? It's not that they're white males.
Really, I feel like that position that you would take is also another extreme, and that for me is really, for me, just comes off as naive, right? Like class is the only deciding factor, as if America in terms of class and class perception has not been tied with ethnicity or whatever by the hip from its very inception. We have videos and interviews and stuff with black billionaires who still experience things like they want to sell a home or something, and if they leave their family portrait up and they see it's a black family, that people attempt to offer them, and people maybe this will get me like excommunicated from the SJWs, but try and fucking Jew them down. Fucking self-made man, billionaire. See black portrait. Are you sure this house is worth that much? It's as big as a city block. What the fuck you mean it is worth that much?
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. I think class, for that kind of thing, when you're talking about rich people, I think class is the number one factor. It doesn't mean it's the only factor. There's other things that factor in: gender, race, all that kind of thing, ideology. There's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of factors involved. And Black people, especially in America, do definitely face issues because of their race, because you can't deny the fact that we're not that far removed in terms of history from Black people being slaves and not having any rights, right? So it takes a while to overcome that in terms of climbing the social ladder, and there's going to be biases passed down from generation to generation, especially it wouldn't surprise me, among rich families who are probably very insular and don't really talk to the average person all that much. They just talk to each other, and so the biases don't change very quickly. Whereas lower class people generally have to talk to a bunch of different people because they got to work and they got to, they got to move, they got to try and do things in the world, so they got to talk to more people.
Yeah.
So to be honest, if you did a study, it wouldn't surprise me to find more racism among rich people than among middle class or poor people.
I think what the as far as anything that we do have is that at least from certain Pew data for income or whatever, the highest, the richest of people, at least their kids are more prone to they think that you can justify greed, and they feel and they're okay with arguments against the concept of sharing, and generally are okay with selfishness as a concept.
If we're living in this society, in this vaguely capitalist society, it's not proper capitalism, but anyway, that's a separate issue. Anyone born into a lot of money is going to be fucked up. That's going to fuck with your head no matter what. Like, you have to be a really special person to not end up as a fucking weirdo if you're born into so much money that you don't need to work ever. Like, because our entire society is based on working and like creating value for yourself and, creating a status for yourself. You got a title, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a teacher, whatever. That's what you work for. If you're born with all this money, what do you work for? What's your purpose in life? Why do you do anything?
Which is probably why some of the biggest names and people that we see that went into philosophy and stuff we read now are people born into money, and that at least how my mother would say that they ain't money nothing but a bunch of rich fucks who didn't have shit else better to do.
Yeah, no, I'm never surprised when a person that's really messed up turns out to have been born to a lot of money, because it's got to mess with their heads. It's got to, like, children of celebrities, children of billionaires and CEOs and all that. Like, you look at like rich areas, there's almost always a drug problem, like among the youths in a rich area, because they got nothing better to do with their time. Life is probably boring if you don't have to work for anything. It's probably pretty boring.
True, especially if you're being insulated and taught that, I guess, sharing and greed are okay.
Yeah,
because there's plenty of people you could be helping. Nah, I'm just gonna do a line of coke and pass out.
Yeah, it's messed up, but there's always gonna be some fucked up people in society, I guess.
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah.
You know what's funny that you say that? Actually, like, I guess I don't know if this is like causation, but a high correlation of people who are like mentally ill live under the poverty line, actually.
That doesn't surprise me. Because being mentally ill would be a disadvantage in society, right? In terms of gaining status or money or a job or anything like that. So if you're mentally ill, it's going to make life a lot hard. That's playing life on extra hard mode, like expert mode. If the video game of life. And I think a lot of mental illnesses are heavily influenced by genetics, right? If your parents have a mental disorder, you're probably more prone to having a mental disorder. So
yeah,
it's like if your parents are,
yeah, and anything that's not, it's highly, you would say, I guess, is also highly heritable from your environment, right? Because if you're say even if you don't have it, you are very likely to develop certain symptoms and shit if you're raised by like a mentally ill single mother in the ghetto, right? Like she has bipolarism, and you'll start to develop like certain traits, and you could possibly be diagnosed with another type of depression or something from living and being raised by that person.
Yeah, it's also another factor in that is so mental illness. Okay, so this is the way I think of mental illness. We all are all capable of experiencing mental illness of some kind or another. We're prone to different types, different things. So some of us depression, some of us schizophrenia, some whatever, right? And we all have a threshold at which it becomes triggered. So if we go through enough stress, then it triggers our mental illness. So for some of us, it would take a shit ton of stress. For some, it only takes a little bit. And then it gets triggered. And once it's triggered, then it's there. Then you're dealing with it for probably the rest of your life. So poor people, in general, experience more stress, right? Because poor people have more problems in life generally, more serious problems. More shit goes wrong, more bad things happen to them, etc. Maybe a bad thing caused them to be poor in the first place. So it makes sense that poor people would have their mental illness triggered. Sorry, a comment from the chat. Lyman Dufresne again. Being rich is fun. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. Maybe that's true. I have met only a few people who are like genuinely like 1% super rich. They seem mostly. They did seem mostly happy. But these were people who got there by being very hardworking. So maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not sure. To be honest, yeah, I'm sort of. I guess I was talking about out of my ass a little bit there. So,
I mean,
yeah, I'll take that criticism.
I mean, even then, being fun. I mean, from what I would discern is, if you're here and typing these things, I don't really think that. I'm not sure if you would be the expert on the lifestyles of the rich and fabulous, but I would say that from people that I've met who are just children of people who just happen to be, I would say, upper middle class, those kids are usually assholes. Like you'll notice like people are talking about like Asians and their excellence. Meet their kids after about a second or third generation. Assholes. Like I don't. It's like they just take all that shit for granted of old pop. And they're just like, yeah, fuck it. I love ecstasy and raves, bruh. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I think one of my ideas for an ideal world is that everyone should be required for at least, let's say, 6 months to a year to work in like the service industry, like customer service or something like that. Just so you experience what it's like to deal with assholes on a regular basis. I think that's a cure for most people for being an asshole themselves. I find a common thing when someone's an asshole, they've probably never worked in the service industry.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know, man. I've met a lot of people who are in service and are assholes.
Yeah, true, but at least then they know that they're an asshole.
True. I don't know what it is. Well, I don't know. Like some people would think that. I guess people, when it comes to you live in kind of like under a certain amount of like with like you said, like capitalism, you like money and all that and resources, that all means quite a bit. So when I give you my resources and you're taking too long to give me the thing of which that I'm requesting of you, I'm probably gonna turn into an asshole real quick. Because as they say, money don't grow on trees.
So our good friend Lyman says everyone should be required to serve 1 year in the military, and I sort of agree with that. Not necessarily the military, but I do think people should, in order to get certain rights, I guess, or certain privileges, you should have to give something back to society first. So the military would be one option, I think. But that now we're getting into a whole political philosophy in terms of what the government should be doing with the people, if anything. Anarcho-capitalists.
They're for me, they're a reaction to the eventual creep in of cronyism that happens whenever you have capitalism in general. You know, like at some point, laissez-faire
capitalists are capitalists.
I would say, but what they think, I guess, what they think is at some point when it comes down to it, the state, there's always going to be some sort of cronyism if you have the state, and I guess that they're a reaction to it. There's like the only way to keep capitalism and have it pure or whatever is for there to not be a state.
Yeah, and that's it's a good argument. I think that's my main criticism of capitalism. That's why I'm not a pure 100% free market capitalist. I do think there needs to be rules in place to prevent that kind of cronyism. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be a state, though. I think that's taking it to an extreme.
Yeah,
and it's unrealistic. It's never going to happen. So
yeah, humans are always going to
might as well
some kind of state.
Yeah,
maybe the anarchists won't call what they've made a state, but bitch, it'll be a state.
Well, my thing, my favorite example now of anyone who says they're an anarchist, I'm always going to give the same example, I think. Look what happened to the Burning Man festival. So this was like the anarchist festival, right? You've heard of Burning Man, I'm guessing, right?
Didn't they go commercial and people rioted?
There you go. So it's this anarchist festival. Anyone can come, right? It's completely open, and you do your own thing. You work together. It's communal. You share. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And then the corporations decided, hey, if everyone's allowed to come, we're going to come too. and then people got pissed off. But it's always going to happen. Anytime you have an open thing, a thing that's open to everyone, someone's going to come and try and take over. And they're going to, if they've got enough resources, they'll hire people to help them take over, and it'll get taken over. It happens every time. It will. Anytime you have an anarchist society, someone will come in and fuck it up.
Yep.
Because that's what people do.
It's kind of with any system, right? Like for me, there's always this common argument that like, okay, this won't work, or that left-wing thing won't work, or that won't work because this happens. For me, that sort of thing to me shows that you need both, right? You need a certain amount of open markets, and you still need safety nets for folks who just either by some will that's not of their own, that they can't participate in them, such as being born mentally retarded, unless we're gonna run around, I don't know, putting people down like dogs. But yeah, I would say a mixture of both.
Well, that's always an option, right? I agree. To be honest, I think anyone pretending they know what the perfect system is talking out of their ass, because for the system that sounds great, but in reality, problems will come up that you're not aware of. So yep. I actually think the U.S. is set up perfectly to figure out the perfect system, because you have all the states, right? So what you could have is you could give each state basically all the power to set up their own system however they see fit, and test it out, try it out. So you could have a 50-cell trial and error system to figure out the best way to run things. So each state could try their own thing, and then you'll see which ones are doing better, which ones are doing worse, why they're doing better, why they're doing worse. And you could see which one's the best system. So you could have one place trying anarchy, one place trying free market capitalism, one place trying communism, whatever. As long as you have set rules in place that make sure it's contained within, and doesn't the communist state doesn't try and take over the entire country or something like that, then, I think that's a good way. Then that's the way we should probably try and figure things out. I think trial and error is a very underrated problem-solving technique.
Yeah, totally. I guess because people are like, I don't know, that would be like that would risk a lot of lives and businesses or whatever. But yeah. I could totally see that in like an ideal thing. Like that would be cool.
Yeah, again, that's my utopian thing. My utopian thing is to let everyone, is to do a test, to do a nationwide trial and error test. But that's never going to happen either. I'm not actually advocating for that. No one's actually going to agree to that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. For me, I would say that the system currently is pretty well set up. It's just that the government is just so corporatist that
well, it's a corporate
isn't.
oligarchy.
Yeah,
That's what we live in. It's a actually every Western country is a corporate oligarchy. So all the power is controlled at the top by corporations, essentially. Um, and I'm not saying corporations are evil. They're not people. They don't have emotions. They're not good or evil. They're just things. Um, but we need to make rules in the system that rein in these corporations. That there needs to be boundaries and rules set in place to make sure that most people aren't being screwed over. We have some rules like that, but there needs to be more high level rules at the top. I
yeah.
think that's the way to do
It's
it. And we can do it if enough people organize and demand specific rules. But there's no desire for that right now, apparently. I think there is, like the Occupy movement and the Bernie Sanders support. People want that kind of thing, not united behind any one specific idea, which is what I think it'll take.
yeah. I feel like that sort of thing. I don't know, man. I feel like the regulations that we had in place, you know, since like even since like FDR served us pretty well. Our dips weren't as bad as they were once we started with our with I guess with Reaganomics, or as uh, George Senior would call them, voodoo economics, like, and all that deregulation. Now the busts are even bigger. Like I really would like it if we would go back to that. Like that was decent. Companies got big. They did their thing. People didn't necessarily have to starve and die in the streets. Like everything seemed like, I don't know. But now if I say that, like, some people would call you an outright fucking commie socialist fuck who needs to leave America.
Yeah, it's weird. I definitely don't think communism is the right way to go, and I get what you're saying, but I don't think you can go back. I think the people in power aren't going to give it up unless they're forced to. You know what I mean? And they're the ones that make the laws, pretty much. Overall, I know it's pessimistic, but I think we're pretty much fucked in terms of changing things in any significant way in terms of the system. The best we can do is sort of tweak the current system. Maybe we can tweak a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and slowly move towards something better. Yeah, we could. I feel like we're going off on a huge tangent. I'm not sure how far you want to go on it. It is your channel.
I'm down for whatever, and it's okay to use things as a launch pad. I do this all over my videos. I go into weird ass tangents for a second and then try and go back around, and it doesn't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
All right, we'll read from the chat. Mr. Dufresne says, large corporations love regulations. They can handle it. Small businesses can't. And Bernie Sanders wants a $15 minimum wage. Coincidentally, so does Walmart. Well, that regulations that hurt small businesses and not large corporations are ones probably designed in large part by large corporations.
Yeah.
It's not like any laws made in recent years have not been basically passed through large corporations, lobbyists. First.
Yeah.
It's like Trump talks about this. There's all these loopholes that all the wealthy people know about and know how to get around. There are ways that you could make the rules in such a way that it would hurt large corporations but not small business. But at this point, doing anything like that, anything drastic like that, because it would have to be drastic, would probably crash the world economy. Because the world economy is based on stability, and anything that hurts large corporations is gonna, in favor of small businesses, is gonna really fuck with the world economy.
Yeah, it
And
would largely
so,
destabilize a lot of it because a lot of the biggest things being traded, stocks, all that stuff, and you like even if even let's say like it eventually would just even out, kind of just like how if we did, like I said, go back to like FTR era type regulations and all that stuff. Even if like when people thought like all this stuff, and a lot of people like especially more conservative on at the time, thinking that it would crash the entire thing. Like there were issues at first, but things stabilized.
mhm.
And
Well,
even if you did, that things are so highly concentrated at that top point that even with that slight destabilization, I'm not really sure if we could really come back up from it. Like we barely came back up from the bullshit that that they pulled, that came to a headway in like late 2007.
oh yeah, the housing market crash. That was yeah, hilariously predictable in hindsight.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. What before it happened, there were very few people calling it, but once it happened, then everyone's like, "Oh yeah, it's obvious."
Yeah, it seemed really weird when you look back at think pieces that people said were quacks and this and that from the left
Oh
and the
yeah,
right. Like, oh, this isn't. Don't do that. That's stupid. Like, fuck you. I got a house. Like, okay. And then like a place where now the house now is up like whatever, like my mom's house actually. Like like we came from Section 8 right to my mom. Like I went back to school or whatever, and we were still on Section 8. But during that time, we bought what was supposed to be, since it's inside of a city and it's a house in Chicago, in the Hyde Park area, what was supposed to be an almost $90,000 house for $12K because of that fucking crash. That is so bad.
wow.
Oh God, this shit. Like, what is wrong with people?
Well, and there, uh, I'm not an expert on economics, especially like housing economics or anything like that. Mortgage, like, but apparently they're doing it again. They just came up with a different name for it, and they started doing it again almost immediately because it's a good way for people to make money over the short. So I wouldn't be surprised if another crash happened. If like we just kept having crashes every 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I mean that's naturally going to happen if you have a completely mostly markets based economy that's not planned out, of course.
Yeah.
Which is there's gonna be booms and busts, boom then bust, boost and then bust. But without these certain regulations, safety nets, all this stuff, we see the busts get worse and worse. And I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, yeah, things have been progressively getting worse and worse and worse. But in general, if you look at the overall economy, like if people would just stop freaking out so much, if people like it when a bust happens, for example, instead of freaking out and selling everything and committing financial suicide, just wait a while. So stop freaking out, wait a while, and things will probably go back to normal eventually. But instead people freak out. So that's human nature. So Mr. Dufresne says, I've yet to hear a single regulation proposed by the left that would only hurt large corporations. I personally would prefer that the government not hurt any company, though. And it doesn't surprise me that the left hasn't proposed a single regulation that would only hurt large corporations, because I don't think the political left has anyone's best interest at heart except for large corporations. And for the record, I think the same about the right. Politically, at least, like the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are both corporate capitalist parties. there's no
Yeah, the only thing what I would say is that they both don't care like about you, but the Republicans have a narrative.
Your kid wants your attention. So while Mabasei talks to his kid, does the chat have anything to say? You can respond to anything you write. and there's a delay, so I'll watch Mabasei's cat walk around. It's a very skinny cat. He's got to feed that cat some more.
Hello, what? Oh, she's not skinny. She's just young. But yeah, oh my god,
Yeah.
what was I gonna say? No, I said I would say the political rights narrative is they'll like let you lay in the dirt, and the left they'll give you a blanket and maybe some rations while you lay in that dirt.
Yeah, pretty much. It's to me, it's just they're two corporate capitalist parties. The only difference is one talks as if they're a left-wing party, and one talks as if they're a right-wing party.
Yeah, yeah. I think also
and functionally, they're basically the same party.
Yeah, the only thing I could really think about for me is that, like, my biggest criticism for just like capitalism is that if we're gonna say like a free market. For me, I've never really seen there to be a true example of it, because at some point someone's gonna get so big that they basically beat out and push out the others, right? Like like something like a big box store that makes your little hardware store fucking irrelevant unless people just absolutely love Joe who runs it. And even then, that the people who actually give a fuck about you as a person won't.
Yeah, South Park did a great episode of basically explaining why capitalism doesn't work in the current system, where they with Walmart. And I think at the end of the episode, they're like, "Hey, let's all go shop at Joe's Pharmacy," and then Joe's Pharmacy becomes a huge big box store, and then they burn it down.
Burn that down.
Yeah,
because.
If you got to go for parenting reasons, that's cool. We can pick this up another time. All right, chat. There's I think one of you.
All right, there we go. All right, it's fine. So you just want to do something. I don't know. Well, yeah.
Right, well, if you want to call it, we can call it.
I forgot we went into capitalism. We were supposed to be talking about identity.
We moved on to a bunch of different things. But I wouldn't mind going because I still have a video to record tonight. I'll probably go to bed within an hour or so. So I want to get that done. But this is a very good chat. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so it was cool to find out that we agreed on so much. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't as entertaining as it would have been if we'd strongly disagreed on everything, but it was still good.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna subscribe to you, and we'll keep in touch, and you can comment on each other's videos and such.
All right, man.
Out sometime in the future if there's like a specific issue that you think well, we can do this again.
All right,
man.
All right,
say hi to your kid.
Oh, she's busy. And anyway, all right, man. Good talks, man.
Yeah, see you around.